About the impact now of the drought emergency in California with Chloe Demrovsky. She's the president and CEO of Disaster Recovery Institute International. Chloe, thanks for joining us once again. I think it's safe to say we take access to safe, clean water for granted here in the U.S. We don't really think twice about turning on the tap or taking a shower, watering our lawns, but these extreme drought conditions out west should not be taken lightly. Quite a few storms lately, but is it enough to really make a dent in this multi-year crisis?
No, these storms might feel like a lot in the moment, but it's not enough. We're talking about the worst drought conditions in 1,200 years. So, California is facing just the beginning of a major crisis that's really impacting all of Southern California. The Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, which is the large water supplier to that area, has declared an emergency declaration to try to get out ahead of it and to prepare to prevent the worst from happening later this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising to see this happen there because this area has been under extreme drought for quite some time. But what role does climate change play in what we're seeing play out there?
It's definitely playing a role. What we're seeing with climate change is that it affects where water goes. In some places, they'll have much too much of it. In other places, they'll have very much too little of it. So places that are drought prone anyway, like all of the American Southwest or much of it, are going to see more and more drought conditions. This is not just happening in the United States, this is happening everywhere. And then it has a ripple effect beyond these areas because you might not think, well, it's fine, I don't live in Southern California, but you think that most of our produce in this country comes from Southern California. It's a major economic driver, and it's where we get a lot of our lettuce, our almonds, our strawberries, all of these things that we take for granted and eat all the time. So it could really have a major impact outside of Southern California as well.
Yeah, not to mention all of the jobs at stake there as well. So economic impacts for sure. You were talking about the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. We know they've declared this a drought emergency. Why is this a big deal? What does this actually mean for residents?
So this means that they can actually take some further steps to create some mandatory restrictions on how people are using water. So about 75% of the water that's used in the urban areas in Southern California is actually used for outdoor water. So that is lawns, gardens, washing down sidewalks, washing cars. This is where it really is being used up. Other outside of the cities, it's really agricultural and industrial, and there's not a lot that the average person can do about that. But they're going to be looking at trying to, maybe control the ways in which people are able to use water, like going to restrictions of watering only once per week, or maybe no watering at all beyond like the trees that nobody wants to lose, for example.
Well, millions of Americans in several states rely on the Colorado River for their water supply. It's essentially drying up. Are state governments doing enough to address the problem?
Well, they are meeting. They're actually meeting right now in Las Vegas to talk about it because it is so challenging, because it's not just one state that's reliant on the Colorado River. It's a whole bunch of them, and it actually goes all the way down into Mexico. So they're downstream totally of all of this. So we're having an issue between states and also between countries. And it certainly is drying out. We see that some of the reservoirs along at Lake Mead, Lake Powell, are at like 25% capacity. A lot of these reservoirs are at 30 to 60% capacity. So it's a really, really huge problem. And the La Nina conditions that we've been seeing for a few years are making that much, much worse. So it's all about conserve, conserve, conserve. And that's why they're looking at potentially other sources of recycling water more efficiently to purify water, and desalination, for example. But that's not really a cure-all because it's very energy intensive and it's really complex, and there are all kinds of other side issues that can come from it. So nothing's really a perfect solution.
Yeah, definitely a complex issue that can't be solved overnight. Chloe Demrovsky, thank you so much for your insight. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Julie.
Well, there's still quite